Right, guys, you can jump in at any stage. It is still on the ABO bits and pieces. Please make sure that you pay attention to this page in particular. We need a cover page, your introduction. Remember, there's the key elements for me that should go into an introduction. It should grab the attention of the reader. It should give me a broad idea of what should go into the report and what we'll encounter, and you'll give me a bit of a roadmap in terms of leading me through the report. Yeah, please don't ever write body. My students, and I talk about my students in particular, I obviously want to see introduction. If you write body, I'm going to be annoyed. Don't write body, but I do want to see conclusion as the other main reference. However you decide to do the questions here is up to you. And then obviously I'd be very surprised if we have appendices and then the references. Yeah, and there is the rubric for that. Again, frustration with the suggested readings. Yeah, I actually don't know what to comment anymore. The stuff that concerns me are the references here that are recommended as indeed. It is not a peer-reviewed reference. It's, I don't know. My students do not use Indeed. It's not peer-reviewed, and I'm going to be grim if you do. The second one, e-commerce. If it's about ABO, then that's fine, but this definitely is questionable as well. The economics discussion in terms of the types of business level strategies. So please make sure that you use peer-reviewed sources. If your OTs have told you that it's okay to use the recommended sources, which we should tell you that it's okay, but it's not up to standard. So please just be very careful from a peer-reviewed perspective. Right, so if we look at these here, I've put the slide references in, and my students would obviously have access to my slides, so we will also add the page references. I'm going to need a little bit of help because I don't have a textbook nearby. So if we look at the first one, it is Learning Unit 4, and my suggestion, my apologies, is that it is that bit there. So it's figure 11.1. Can somebody give me a page reference for that? Thank you so much, Boya. How do I get rid of this stupid thing? Okay, page, I'm just going to go P. The right page out. P375. Thanks, Boya. Simple as that. I'll share this with you guys. Guys, the process of becoming a multinational enterprise, very clear. If you look at that slide, going to be a little bit difficult to paraphrase, but please paraphrase, don't simply give that. Stefan, it is the 24th of October. Can somebody please confirm that for me, guys? I don't generally track the submission dates for my students. Can I ask one of my students to let me know? Thanks, Rowan. Okay, we've got that. Guys, in terms of this evolution that is suggested here, often starts off with you having a great product, a great brand, a local brand, and people then start querying about it. Normally, the first step into it is export, and we move from export to setting up branches and then licensing foreign manufacturers. And then obviously you start looking at setting up your own manufacturing facilities. And when you have a footprint across a range of countries, you start becoming a multinational. And we talk about multinational enterprises as these global behemoths with a lot of power, with a lot of clout. And also, and also the fact that these are those kinds of organizations that could buy a country. Stats show that about 2/3 of the world's wealthiest economies, in fact, are big businesses. So a place like Google could buy a country like pretty sure they could buy South Africa. Sorry, that's being sarcastic. To also just say, this is the typical evolution. Remember, there are companies that are born global that go from 0 to a gazillion overnight. Give me examples of born global companies, just to get a sense that this isn't the only process. What are some of the examples of born global companies? Facebook, yeah, started off in the UK, but went global very quickly. Good one. Others, most of you subscribe to these. Coca-Cola would have taken a bit of time to get to the stage they now. Remember, they were sold. Netflix, yeah, remember the evolution of Netflix initially was that they would deliver videos to your drawer, but the moment they went in terms of using online technology, went global and would have jumped several of those steps. Spotify would fit into that as well. Nashil, just remember, Coca-Cola was initially sold in local pharmacies and was full of cocaine, and it made you feel very good, but it wasn't really healthy for you and has grown from there. Spotify, to me, that is a born global company. And then also remember, we have Google, which in my mind is also a born global company. Typical evolution, I don't believe that the example from the case AVO would go through this, but that's what they're asking, that's what they're getting. The second question then, the macroenvironmental analysis of Botswana. Guys, there is a lot of information available on Botswana, so there shouldn't be too much difficulty finding information on the potential of Botswana. And I can't remember what slides they were, 18 to 29. I'm not going to go through all of them. I could have put 17, but that's just what you'll be looking at. Thank you so much. It will start at page 380 and it will carry on from page 380. Thank you. On 380 onwards, and you'll pick up where it is too. Just remember, in terms of this is an application type question. Again, for me, and depending on what your OTs told you, my students, I don't need you to discuss this is political, legal, and demographic factors and what they mean. I need an analysis. And remember, if we look at the specific question, a macro-environmental analysis, so the focus in terms of this question will only be on those pestle factors. Pestle is the best way to describe them. I think the best way to attack this is to almost approach it with the attitude that we are going to look at establishing ourselves in Botswana and what are the realities there now. We know that they've got a fairly stable government. We know that they have fairly low levels of corruption. There are other issues, though, in terms of the natural environment. But remember, the focus is on those elements that pertain to AVO. So don't wander into the macro environment and every bit of the natural environment, because it's not going to affect your business itself. Things like available electricity, you can look at that. You can look at GDP, economic growth. You can look at a small population. I know that HIV is an issue, but it's a growing population. We know that the pula is quite a strong currency. So those are the kinds of things that you'll put into it. But for my students, I don't need you to tell me, oh, this is a political legal thing. I just need to see the actual pestle analysis, so the macro environmental analysis. Anyone here know much about Botswana that want to share with us about Botswana, what the realities are in Botswana? And I'm pretty sure I've got some of it already covered, but stable government, low corruption, lots of those kinds of things act as real positives. Anyone else want to share about Botswana? Yeah, very reliant on diamond export, yeah. Also, the cities are quite far apart. I don't know from an infrastructural development what it's like. So you can do an analysis of it. There is definitely a lot of information available on Botswana. And remember, unfortunately, my brain always goes a little bit while I'm working, and I'm thinking about sharing this 70%. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's pretty impressive. What is the population, Dylan? 2.5 million. I thought there were 4 million. Okay. I will share this with the OTs and they can give this to you. This is a wonderful way of doing an analysis of a country. And let's just wait for this to start. It's that, what is nice about that analysis, and I will stick it on the OT group if the OTs could share it with their students. It's a very, very nice way of doing it, and it's simple because you don't have to go thinking about the actual application stuff. You would look at government policy, and it's government policy in terms of the attitude towards foreign business. You would look at tax policies. You would look at issues in terms of labor relations, those kinds of things. You would look at political stability, and you'd see the rest here, and then each of those. I think this is worth sharing. To be honest with you, my students, and I'm talking now directly to my students, I expect you to default to this. If you want to read extra, you can look at the slides and the textbook. What this does, though, it gives you a wonderful option in terms of analysis to also say that those of you that are considering studying next year, if you end up doing your honors, there is international business, and my international business at an honors level, students use this pestle all the time. I will share it and it will be made available. Unless you just want to take a picture of it and have it a bit earlier. I'll give you guys a second to take a pic of it. Is it worth sharing? Okay, make sure that I share it. All right, so in terms of this, okay. So in terms of that, you're looking at the pestle factors. There shouldn't be any dramas. My students, it's tons of slides that you could look at in terms of what is available. I'm pretty sure that your own OTs would have made something like this available. I definitely am not going to go through it. My students, remember, I don't expect you to tell me what the legal environment is. I would rather just see what the pestle analysis is in terms of that question. Any questions on that? Any issues? If we then look at the appropriate international strategy for them to adopt, I put page 48, sorry, slide 48. Thanks, Boyo. Yeah, let's start there, and then I'll take you through them and I'll explain my option for you. Yeah, so the appropriate international strategy. I just want to make sure that I have that right. At 396, you should be able to find that fairly simply. If we look at the specifics around those strategies, right, the two things that we need to look at when considering which strategy to opt for will always be issues in terms of cost pressures and maximizing economies of scale, for example. And then the second issue, pressures for local responsiveness. So how do we personalize our product in line with what the realities are within Botswana, and how important is it for us to keep our costs low? If we consider AVO, what are the pressures from a cost perspective and global integration and making sure that everything runs globally as a smoothly oiled engine? Are the cost pressures high? Are the pressures high to keep the costs low? Has anyone had a chance to read the case study? Yeah. Don't you think so, Bill? I think, remember, if we think of the reality of this, there's a massive pressure to keep the costs low for me. I honestly think in terms of the app itself, they push to keep the cost as low as possible. Anyone else? Yeah, you see, it is a new concept, but the reality is that it doesn't mean because you're in a blue ocean that you can get too arrogant about it, because this is not really a protectable type of thing. Competitors could easily come in. If you want to go with the fact that they don't mind the costs, I'm quite happy. My students know that I mark as long as you give me proper argumentation in terms of why you've opted for a specific one. And then pressures for local responsiveness. For me, the reality is, how much must we personalize it? That would be very high. I agree with you, Dylan. It has to be high, because you can't just try and Lego block something into Botswana and think because it works in South Africa, because they're the same as us, because they're not the same as us. The realities are different, so there will be real pressures for local responsiveness. On the basis of well, that's what I would have gone for. My discussion would have been the stuff that's on slide 48 for my students. I think there's real pressures for cost reduction. I think part of these apps and part of the attraction of these apps is the fact that they are cheap and that they're easily accessible. And then the reality is, when you read here, a lot of what yeah, boy, multi-domestic is okay, but if you read that line there, the simple truth is that it is based on the core competencies of this particular organization, obviously Nedbank, and we can then argue that it's necessary to transfer those global learning and learning from each other, and you can see some of the stuff won't apply. Let's have a look at multi-domestic. Well, you can argue that. I can see how you can argue that, as long as you can argue properly that there are no real pressures to keep the costs low. Yeah, you can go multi-domestic. It's going to be either multi-domestic or transnational. To just say, for me, as long as you can argue, I don't care too much about the memo. I think my students know that I mark on the basis of your argumentation. So whichever way you want to go, if you've already gone with multi-domestic, then that's fine. For me, it fits into that. But again, it's the way you argue. Any questions on that? I'll leave the slide there. I should actually just allow you guys to take pictures of the slides. I'm not concentrating today. So if you want to take a quick picture, that's my suggestion, or you can go multi-domestic. And remember, I don't want to contradict your OTs. If the OTs want to jump in and tell me what they think, who is here? Are there any other OTs on the call? I don't think there are. Okay. So whatever I say doesn't matter. I'm just kidding. Right. So page from 396 onwards. Is that right, Dylan? Oh my gosh, why is it doing that? Thanks. Okay, for some. Oh, I gotta love it when my machine doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I'm not even going to try and think what's going on. Right, and then arguments to support your recommendation. So in terms of the arguments, remember, it's integrating those two bits. Don't just look at this one here. Try and remember that it's going to be a combination of the macro-environmental analysis as well as what the app offers its users. And to me, you would use a combination of those two in terms of arguing your recommendation. Guys, can I move on? Okay. Yes, I know you wish your own OT was doing this. It doesn't get better than this, guys. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. You can have a glance at that. I'm not going to look at the rubric. All right, the second one is here. Thanks, Boyo. For my students, Learning Unit 5, so you'll have a glance at the slides. And we'll look at slides 17 and 18. Right, so when we look at the options in terms of strategic, visionary, and managerial leaders, have I got the right? My apologies, 17. Okay. Guys, so if we look at, it's pages 428 and 429 that you're looking at. I can't understand why. Yes, you have to. So in terms of attacking this question, you will take each of those leadership options, sorry, pages 428 and 429. You'll take each of those leadership options. Strategic leaders, the reality is that these are people high in strategic intelligence, able to look at the world differently, able to see opportunities, able to see how the organization internally links, externally also understand what needs to change in an organization in order to maximize what we can get out of our strategies. Visionary leaders, you'll find it's the Steve Jobs type individual who will always look at the world differently, creates an ambitious future that people in the organization are capable of identifying with. These are those individuals that create visions that are inspirational and aspirational, inspiring people to aspire to be great in an organization. Steve Jobs, amazing in terms of some of the visions he created. The same guy who gave us Apple also gave us Pixar, and Pixar obviously gave us the first Toy Story movie and a whole bunch of other movies beyond that, all part of a vision. One of my favorite stories of visionary leaders is someone like James Cameron. James Cameron wrote the script for Avatar, the original Avatar, and realized that the technology wasn't available yet and put it in the bottom drawer, and then knew that somewhere in the future he would be able to give life to this amazing creation that he had written. And it's those kinds of visionaries that we see in the world. Managerial leaders are those individuals that are very good at dotting the I's and crossing the T's. These are individuals who actually can take a vision and make it come alive in terms of providing the internal instruments in an organization to actually make things happen. Again, reading the options, I'd like to hear what you think the best leadership style would be. If I could ask my group just to take pictures of those 2 pages and please just put it on the group for people who don't have the textbook. Any suggestions which option we should follow? Yeah, that's where I would go as well. I would go with strategic leadership, that combination between those individuals that are able to create great visions, but also then create the organization to give those visions some life, to make those visions come alive. So my option would be strategic leadership. Any other options that you might have started writing about? I don't know if anyone has written anything there. And yeah, remember the advice here, the type of leader that will be most beneficial, and then provide your reasons for it. The reasons will be there. And key in terms of this entire assignment is about integrating the theory with the application. So it's not a theory assignment only, it's not an application of theory. We need to see a balance between theory and application in your discussions. Everyone okay with that one? Perfect. And again, you can have a look at the rubric, right? And then question 3. Yeah, this is one. Oh, please just give me. This is one where we've had problems with in the past. I've put Learning Unit 5, slide 28. Now, key in terms of slide 28 is to remember that not all of these elements will apply to Botswana. Remember, King is particular to South Africa, it's unique to South Africa. So don't just slavishly go and copy all the nonsense that is there. I think key in terms of answering that question, and it is slide 28. Somebody give me a page number there. Thank you. Key to remember there is to remember we are going into a different country and the ethical factors that we need to consider when going into Botswana. So it has to do with morals and values, it has to do with standards and morals and values within the country. Remember, this is part of a global process. No, not at all. Not at all. 441, it is the ethical factors that we need to consider. So when we think of ethics and ethicality, it is about morals and values within society. Now, one of the arguments is to then understand the laws, the morals, the values. No, no. It's not that you're attacking it from the wrong angle, Dylan. You're starting to think like a master student when you're still doing your undergrad. No, that definitely is not what we're asking here. It's not about the ethics of international expansion. And I know that they are anti-globalization. It's honestly, boy, the truth is, if your argumentation is good enough, but remember, I'm not your OT, I would have maybe taken that as misunderstanding the question and I would have given marks for it. But the reality is, what do we need to consider going into Botswana? We need to consider their laws. We need to consider their prevailing values and morals. We also need to remember that because this is an organization that is going to go bigger and hopefully become global, do we use the morals and values within the country, but we also need to consider international morals and values. So if you look at the slide there, what slide did I say? And I'm just opening the wrong one. Sorry, guys. There it is. So if you look at that, it really is about looking at their pieces of legislation and how we will personalize what we do in terms of their legislation, making sure that from a leadership perspective, we model that kind of behavior. There's a lot of there is a lot of stuff on ethics and ethicality. There are lots of descriptions. Let me see what else I've got here. Let me see if I can share it with, and you can simply just So those of you that all would have done this ethics. Let me search for it easier. So this is from your second year textbook. There is a lot to consider in terms of ethics, and there is a lot on it. So if you still have your second year textbook, you can have a glance at it. Will it be worth me sharing these slides, and all you need to do is then reference the second year textbook? I can definitely do that, and your OTs will share that with you as well. Let's hold on a second. Well, essentially, just think of it from AVO's perspective and argue to behave ethically. There's certain things an organization has to do. And in terms of doing those kinds of things, we need to make sure that we fit the way we do business into the realities of Botswana. So ask yourself what it means for an organization to be ethical. That really answers your question. Let me see what other bits and pieces I have here. I can't share that. Let me see what this is. I'm pretty sure I can share this as well. Yeah, might not be great. Let me go here quickly. Sorry, this is not the most professional way of doing this, but anyone who thought I'd be professional is in the wrong place. Just say, guys, these are the subjects you also do when you do honors after here. My apologies. Let me see what I've got here. You can also just reference the textbook that is at the end of the slide. There's a lot of ethical leadership. I'll share this one as well. You'll see that the textbook is at the end here. So just reference that textbook. I'll share that. There's a bit in there as well. But just remember, Bill, I'm worried that you're overthinking this. So the simple truth is, what does it mean to behave from a business perspective in an ethical way? And when you go into Botswana, how do we replicate, how do we take the prevailing ethics in our business and make it work in Botswana, considering that they're a different society, considering that they have adjusted laws in terms of what we have. Don't overthink this one, boy. I'm worried that you're overthinking this one. Okay, this shouldn't be a headache, guys. 10 marks. Everyone okay with that one? I'm not sure that I've answered it well enough. Right, so nothing else dramatic here. We've got 20 minutes left. I'm quite happy to answer any questions. I will make sure that I share this as well with your OTs, and the recording will be available. I would urge you to ask questions now. Cole, you fine? Hi, Kim. How's it? Kim, do you want to add anything? Sorry, I know you snuck off. It's a pleasure, guys. It's a pleasure.
No, thanks, Henny. I think you did a marvelous job at explaining all those questions. I know I snuck off there, but I did manage to catch the last few questions. So thank you for that. And yeah, if they've got questions, let them ask. But thank you. I think you did cover it, and I will share all those slides and all the other information with my groups as well. So thanks for that.
It's an absolute pleasure. Right, everyone. Please look after yourselves and do well in the assignment. My group, I'll see you guys tomorrow evening. Have a good evening, everyone. Cheers, cheers. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.